Coming up on the Mobile Content Creators Show.
I think it's a completely different mindset. So I don't really film anything normally anymore. I can't think about that frame and the fourth wall. I just don't think like that. I think all the way around me. And you have to change that feeling. And it's a completely different mindset.
On today's show, 360 video and virtual reality. What is it, and is it all it's cracked up to be?
Welcome to the Mobile Content Creators Show. If you're a mobile journalist, marketer or creative who makes content on a mobile device or for mobile audiences, you're in the right place. Keeping you up to date with the fast-moving world of mobile, here's your host and mobile video specialist, Mark Egan.
Well, today I'm joined by Sarah Jones, who's the Deputy Head of the School of Media and Performing Arts at Coventry University. That's all well and good, but what we're really interested in is Sarah's one of the leading experts on virtual reality and what you might call immersion journalism. Would that be the right term?
I think so. I always go with immersive journalism. Yeah.
All right. Well, you come from a background of, working at ITV as a journalist and newsreader. At which point did you think VR, virtual reality, this is something I really need to get involved in?
For me, I started in television, traveling the world, telling stories, and it was always great. But for me, there was always a barrier, and that barrier was the screen. I could never get close enough to the stories to really tell the story that I wanted to. So when video journalism really started picking up and then into mobile journalism, I found that I could get closer to the stories and I could get to the bottom of it a lot more. I could let people really tell their stories. And that's why I loved the movement into video and then mobile. But still there was a barrier, and that barrier was always the screen that I just wanted to jump over to get to the bottom of everything. And then when I watched my first story on a Google Cardboard headset and I could look around and I could feel like I was there, that's when I realized that this was what I'd been waiting for. This was what I was looking for at all those points where I started doing reporter involvement and getting involved and getting close. But now I could actually remove that barrier and become part of the story and take an audience to the heart of the story.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. Lots of people talk about VR, virtual reality, and 360 video, and they talk about it interchangeably. But I'd be right in saying that they're not necessarily the same thing.
No, it's always one of those big conversations and something that you can always get into masses of arguments about on social media. 360 is not VR. For everyday people, is. A member of the public, my great granny, she was watching the Cirque du Soleil in a headset a few weeks ago. She thought that was VR. It was in a virtual reality headset, and that's fine. There is a big distinction, and I always like to think of it as a spectrum. And you have 360 video as that gateway into the virtual reality space. So by 360 video, we're basically just talking about cameras that film all the way around, up, down, and all around. And then we move on to more interactivity and more computer generated content, which is more virtual reality. So I like to try and combine the two elements. I like to try and see what we can do with both. And I think that's really exciting. But yeah, we have 360 filming on one side, high-end VR on the other. But fundamentally, what we're doing is creating 360 stories, but we're viewing them through a virtual reality headset.
So could you say that 360 is almost like you standing in one spot looking around you, and virtual reality is exploring a world a bit more? It's being a bit more kind of immersed and a bit more proactive.
Absolutely. There's more choices, there's more decisions, there's more freedom, I think. A lot of people refer to 360 as almost being like the lamppost, that you're just standing there and there's nothing you can do. I always talk about it as being the Swayze effect, where you've got Patrick Swayze in Ghost and you can see everything happening around you, but you can't actually have any impact on what's happening, no impact on the narratives. And when we talk about narratives in 360, we're still pretty much talking about quite a linear narrative. But in VR, it's very non-linear. You can jump here, there, and everywhere. But it is a good entry into the space.
I like the fact that you've brought Patrick Swayze into virtual reality. That's fantastic. Now, you raised the point about storytelling, so we may as well get into that. Whether you're doing, drama or you're doing news, one of the problems people have is traditionally, like you say, the journalist has said, this is what I want to show you, or the film director has said, this is what I want to show you. And now you're putting people in the world, they can make their own decisions. So should you just put them in there and say, live it up, do what you want to do, or are you still supposed to lead them through a story?
I'm always in two minds about what I think. I love the idea that we're just creating an experience, and it's up to anybody to go where they want to and experience that for themselves. But there is still an element, particularly within 360 filming, where you are still telling a story and you've got to think of that story. But it's more that story's driving it rather than the actual shot and, you know, a close-up here or a wide shot there. We don't have that flexibility. We're creating an experience. So at the heart of everything, it's how do you want an audience to experience that story? And that has to drive the narrative. So whether it's being in the middle of a protest where you can look around and you can hear people chanting and you can see the banners, rather than this is a close-up of this sign and this is someone else's face chanting. So there's a lot more flexibility. The responsibility really is with the audience, and where they want to go and what they want to see, but there is still an element of directing that in terms of what you are actually showing them.
So you mentioned, I love the way you dropped into my granny was watching the Cirque du Soleil on a headset, as grannies do. But if somebody was thinking, right, this all sounds very interesting, what is the lowest budget way I can experience this? Would it be Google Cardboard for you?
Yeah, absolutely. Google Cardboard really transformed virtual reality, and I'm under no illusion that because of Google Cardboard, this is why we're having this massive push towards it. The Oculus Rift and the HTC Vive are absolutely amazing consoles, but you need such a high-end machine to power them. You need the space for the Vive, which is incredible, and there's nothing I like better than jumping in tilt brush on the Vive. But it's not accessible to everybody. But if you've got a cardboard headset and a smartphone, you can experience it. You don't even need the headset at the moment. You've got 360 videos on social networks like Facebook and YouTube where they have the tilt and rotate function. Facebook did a great thing with their new 360 camera last week in Grand Central Station in New York, and I watched it on my phone and it was fine. I didn't need to put in a headset. So
and that was a kind of drama narrative, wasn't it, where people were and it was they used audio, didn't they, to say, well, there's a conversation happening on with my right shoulder, you turn around there. So that they guided you through audio, didn't they?
Yes, audio is one of the big hot topics at the moment within 360 filming and virtual reality. And we've all been blown away by the technology with the cameras and the headsets. And audio has kind of been forgotten, but it really is the most important thing in driving those narratives forward. You can have, I always refer to the New York Times Displaced, where you've got the plane flying above you. And as you hear a plane flying above you, you naturally look up. So you've got those audience cues to help drive the narrative. And that's what Facebook did. So they filmed this scenario at Grand Central Station, which was basically just 5 or 6 different events happening as you would expect in a station. But you could hear the people talking, so you were naturally looking to where they were. And that's one really interesting way to use audio to drive narratives forward. But that was so accessible. It was on your phone. So we are seeing people being able to get into the space and experience 360 as a natural gateway then into more higher end virtual reality, which is really exciting for people to do.
And if they've got their cardboard, any particular sort of apps or videos or anything that they should you would recommend they watch?
I always tell everyone to download the Verse app, VRSE. Verse is a great company that has produced some amazing films, really high-end films for the United Nations. Chris Milk, he's done Clouds Over Sidra, which is probably one of the most talked about 360 films, Waves of Grace. So lots of really powerful narratives. And they also have some fun things as well. So Catatonic, a horror film, which drives everyone crazy, which is really good to watch people's first experience of catatonic, where you're in a wheelchair being pushed to a mental asylum, and lots of horrible things happen. So that's always a good one. So there's a range of content there. And Jaunt as well is a good organisation which has lots of VR content on their app.
Now, probably like you, I'm fortunate enough to go to some of these events where you have rows and rows and rows of headsets from all the different, manufacturers, and lots of really ridiculous looking businessmen staring into space in different directions. But for many people, like, that's as far as it's gone for them. They've maybe experienced cardboard. What is the next level up, and what's so good about it? Why should people not be content saying, well, I've experienced cardboard, I'll leave it there?
Cardboard's great as the route into it and making it accessible. And you do see so many people doing their branded cardboard headsets now. The New York Times shipped out 1.2 million of them in November, and they're doing another wave of cardboard headsets being sent out to subscribers again. So we're seeing lots of that. There are other headsets then that take it the step further. So the black plastic Homido headset, which is very similar to the cardboard headset, but a lot sturdier and has a really good view. The next step, I would say, is the Samsung Gear headset. Samsung have been incredible in jumping into the VR 360 wave at the moment, and their Gear headset is fantastic. It's powered by Oculus Rift, so you've got that technology and you've got the Oculus Store, so it opens up a massive array of experiences and games. You can add a controller to it if you are a game player, or you can just sit and dive into a social space like VTime or Alt Space, where you get to explore social virtual reality. So that's kind of the next step, and then we go into the bigger consoles, the Oculus Rift, the Vive, later in the year, the PlayStation. And those are incredible machines, but they do require a big investment to get into it.
Now, you talked about social virtual reality. There's gaming, there's news, marketing, drama, all that kind of stuff. Talk to me a bit about how that actually looks and feels. So social virtual reality, how does that work?
I still feel slightly awkward in social VR spaces. I'm not sure the technology is just there yet for me to really love it. There's part of me that feels like I'm back in 1997 in a chat room on MSN. There's something a little bit weird about it, but I love the ability to be able to go to different places. So on VTime, you can go to a campfire and it's beautiful and you can just sit down. So for relaxation, it's amazing. And beaches as well, which are really good to do. So I can be sitting in my home, stick on a headset and go to the beach. And I'm like, that's pretty cool. That's pretty good. I don't want anyone else to bother me at the moment there. But that's a pretty cool space to be in. So I think once the social technology develops a lot more, we'll see a lot more interaction, and then that will really help drive the technology further. The experiences can be quite insular. They can be quite a personal experience. And once we start getting more social interaction, and that's going to be with the development of augmented reality as well.
But if just to stop you there, so you're sitting on the beach there with your headset, your imaginary beach, being social. So if I come and hang out on the beach as well, how does that work? How do I communicate with you? Is this computer generated, this whole scene?
Yeah, so you would have an avatar kind of developed from the Second Life kind of avatar. Say you're a person there and you jump into either VTime or Alt Space, and you can talk to people and you can see their avatars and you can move along. You can go through a maze, you can climb to the top of the mountain, you can go to the beach or the campfire, and you can just hang out, you can just chill, or you can play games. So we could sit down, we could play a game together, or we could watch some YouTube videos if we wanted to. So you can do all of that within the virtual space. I still like VR for games or experiences rather than being social, but maybe that's just me being antisocial.
So, I mean, there's one argument for it that's all about, like you say, experiences. So whether it's something like news, taking people to a refugee camp and saying this is what it's really like, or gaming or something like that. But then you briefly mentioned augmented reality, which is taking it to almost like a super reality level. Talk to me a bit about that. So what are you seeing and why is it exciting?
It's It is a really exciting space in lots of many ways. I mean, you've got simple augmented technology where, say, ThingLink, for example, they've developed interactive videos and videos that can be more interactive and augment various bits of information on, which is great for education, which I do a lot of work in. But then we're seeing things like Motion Leap and the HoloLens and things where the whole world is just going to change around you. I think we're a long way off from that. The technology is moving at such a fast pace, but I do think we're still a long way off it. And then I think it'll be really transformational, and we'll be able to see people next to us wherever we want to go, which is a little bit scary, but really quite exciting.
And you work in academics or academia. Young people coming into the media industry or gaming industry or marketing industry, what skills are they going to have to learn to make sure that they're ready for this VR world?
I think it's a completely different mindset. So I don't really film anything normally anymore. I can't think about that frame and the fourth wall. I just don't think like that. I think all the way around me. And you have to change that feeling. And it's a completely different mindset. So I'm going to Hong Kong in a few weeks, and I'm looking at different stories that I want to film there. And at the heart of everything that I'm looking at, it's what's that experience? And there's the questions and the work that I do within embodied experiences, where you get to become someone else in the world. What do I need to be able to tell that story? And it is a different mindset. It's a different way of thinking, all rooted in experience and being somebody else. So yeah, it's changing the mind. And that's why I stay away from normal 2D stuff now, because I can't think like that.
That's too old school for you. You're way too modern and down with the kids, aren't you?
Yeah, well, once you stepped into the virtual world, there's no going back, I like to think. So yeah, it's a different skill set, but it's also... it's so new, and the technology is changing constantly. If you miss one day of announcements, you've missed so much, and it's a constant learning curve. So I'm working on some software called Wonder VR at the moment, which is just interactive virtual reality software, and I'm developing this paramedic experience for students. But there's no guides, there's no workflows, there's nothing like that, because it's all new and it's just trial and testing all the time. So you've got to have that kind of mind that you can deal with that. There's not a load of forums or things to go to, or tried and tested routes. And that's the same when it comes to filming as well. When you're filming with GoPro rigs and one of the camera drops its frame rate and then you can't use it, what are you going to do? Those kinds of questions. So it's very much thinking on the spot and looking at workarounds when things do go wrong, which they happen to go wrong a lot.
And I've got Theta S like you. What kits would you recommend if somebody's listening to this and thinking, wow, that really sounds good, I need to get on board here, I want to make content in a sort of 360 or VR world? What do they do?
Well, there's lots of options on mobile phone apps which allow you to create panoramic images, 360 images, and you can put them for the dual screen so you can view them within a VR headset. So you don't need to have a massive investment at the moment if you just want to play around and have a think about what you might do. The next option obviously is the Theta S, which is a brilliant piece of kit, absolutely incredible, which has put the technology of actually crafting stories and narratives and taking 360 images into so many people's hands, which is really, really good. That's about £300, allows you to live stream, allows you to take still images and video as well. And then we've got the Samsung Gear camera coming out, the 360 camera, in just a few weeks. And that's around the same price tag as the Theta, but it's slightly better quality. And then that goes into your Gear VR headset. So there's lots of options around that kind of price band. The next step would be probably around the Kodak dual camera. So Kodak brought out an SP360 camera, and it's a dual mount. So you put two of those 360 cameras together. And again, the quality is a little bit better then. And then the next step is when you start talking about rigs like this, which is a 360 Heroes rig, which is made up of 6 GoPros, Hero 4s, and then you film with that. it's a pain. It's an absolute pain, and then you've got to stitch it all together. The Theta camera and the Samsung Gear does all of its stitching automatically for you, which is great. When you start talking about rigs, you're taking it into color or video stitch software, which also costs quite a lot, and then having to manually stitch it together, which is an art form in itself and one that I'm not very good at. And then you can start manipulating that and putting it through post-production in After Effects or Premiere or Final Cut, whatever you choose to do. So there's various different options to actually get into the space.
Because that was one of the things when I first started trying it. I didn't realize that fact that if you stick it into Final Cut Pro or something and start messing around and are not careful, it loses all the metadata, and suddenly you're left with a really stretchy like video shot, which doesn't quite work. So I mean, I've thinking of the obvious uses of some of this stuff, like walking around a house to sell it for real estate agents and gaming and news organizations. Where do you see all this going? What's exciting you most about what we could be using this for in 5-10 years time?
For me, it's all about creating embodied experiences and understanding what it's like to walk in someone else's shoes, and using that for education as well. So the paramedic work that I've been doing is basically for a student to become a paramedic and face someone in front of them choking, and they have to make decisions. What do they decide to do, and where is their journey going to be? So almost a choose your own adventure style within a 360 film in a headset. So you are that paramedic, but also using it for to understand other people's mentality. So when you see things about gender and race and age, you can be somebody else and understand what it's like to be somebody else in that space. I think that's where the real power of the technology is. And in education, so I have a 4-year-old who has her own headset and she absolutely loves it. And it's covered in Cinderella stickers, but she runs around chasing dinosaurs constantly when she's got her headset on. So you can really see children's minds changing and being blown away by the experiences when they can see something and be anywhere that they want to be. So if a teacher is teaching about space, you don't just have to tell them about space, you can have the lesson on the moon, which is really exciting and I think really transformational for education.
And listening to you speak, and you can see the trend growing, and like I say, you go to Mobile World Congress or Consumer Electronics Show, and there used to be a few headsets in the corner, and now it's just rows and rows and rows. It's unbelievable. People perhaps who worked in video, and now they're finding their bottom line being hit because everybody can make video so easily now. Do you think there's a sort of a whole new industry growing of people who need to be able to create content for, in 360 or even VR? Do you think that's a route that people need to get on board with?
I don't think people need to get on board with it. I don't want the space being flooded with bad content. It's hard whilst everyone is navigating how we tell a story in 360 and how we tell a story in a virtual space. And there's a lot of bad content out there. I've made a lot of bad content as well. So it's that worry that people will put on a headset and they might watch something that's really bad and think, you know what, that VR thing's a load of nonsense. It's not very good. We're going to put it away and we'll never come back to it. And that's my worry, that people will have that really bad first experience and be put off by it. So it's about creating the right content. And at the moment, while everyone is trying and playing in the space, there is a lot of bad content, but there's also a lot of amazing content. And that's what I want to drive people towards. So you can really see the opportunities, not just in gaming, but for telling stories, for education. There was some work being done this week about crime scenes being reproduced in 360 for jurors. So instead of just looking at the crime scene on a 2D image, they could put on a headset and look around. So you're kind of seeing that opportunity, but it's making sure that there's good stuff out there.
That's interesting, because you're talking as if you're trying to convince people that this is a great new technology, and you don't want people coming in and blowing the image of it. And I was speaking to somebody a little while ago who said, oh well, there was 3D TV that never really took off. Do you think, because I feel that this is inevitable, no matter how much bad content people put up, it's just at some point this is really taking off, and it kind of already is. Do you see it as something that just is going to become a part of everyday life, every school, every business, or is it going to be something that kind of a few nerds in the corner will be using?
Yeah, I think I'm always the nerd in the corner that will always be sat with a headset on and trying a new headset every day. And I do have rows and rows of them as well. But I do think it has to become more mainstream. The technology is that advanced now that it is accessible. Nearly everyone has the Facebook app on their phone with tilt and rotate features. So everybody is getting into that space. I'm not convinced that every household is going to have an Oculus Rift or a Vive setup. It's just not affordable. It's not accessible enough. But there is that market for those people and different setups. But as far as everybody embracing 360, I think it is inevitable. And there are so many opportunities, as you said, with marketing, with estate agents and holidays. All those kinds of industries can benefit from this. Any industry where you need to show someone what it's like to be somewhere else and have an experience, this technology is for them. I think augmented and more mixed stuff is a lot further off. In getting that into everyday life. But certainly 360 is here, virtual reality is here, and that's what's great.
Just finally, you seem to be on top of all of this and what's happening. What's coming out in the next perhaps year, whether it's a project, a piece of equipment, an announcement, what's coming out in the next year that you're looking forward to, that you're excited about?
I'm interested to see what PlayStation do this year. Their console's coming out in November. I think it's going to be much more geared towards gaming, but I think that's going to make VR a lot more accessible because it's powered off PlayStation rather than having a big full-blown gaming PC. So I think that's good. I think the developments with the cameras, we are seeing new cameras all the time. The Samsung Gear camera, which is out in a few weeks, I think that's going to really transform it as well. So probably just more cameras and more automatic stitching, which is music to most people's ears. So it's those developments that are really good. And then whatever happens with Motion Leap and Augmented is going to really blow people away, but maybe not make it as accessible right now.
Well, it's been fascinating, and I think your students are very lucky to have somebody trying to keep on top of things, because it's not easy in this sort of industry to give students the latest information. But if people want to find out more about you, connect with you, where should they go?
Probably my Twitter page, Virtual Sarah J. I'm always on Twitter. I live on Twitter. I do live in a virtual world where I'm constantly talking about VR. That's the easiest place.
Or on the beach or at the campfire, obviously.
Exactly. At any time in Old Space or V time, and I'll be there sipping a cocktail on the beach, dreaming about the virtual world.
All right. Well, I promised I'd let you go now. So thank you very much. It's been brilliant. And I look forward to keeping up to date with what you're looking into.
Thank you.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to subscribe. And we'd love it if you would leave a review on iTunes or Stitcher. To get in touch with Mark, go to www.purplebridgemedia.com or tweet him at Mark Egan Video.